So now it should work. We're alive, guys. We're alive. Okay. We're going to review slightly from what we did last week and then pick up for this week's material. Last week, this is our second class, by the way, okay? This is the second week. Homework and assignments, I will post in the announcement section, okay? So for all those enrolled in the course, please make sure your announcements, as you see right here, and also in the Shabbos course, that's how you keep in touch with what you have to do when it should be automatically sent to your email once an announcement is posted. Okay. So last week we went through an introduction to Basar veChalav. We went through all the reasons, we went through the psukim, and we began discussing the three-way prohibition, which is very unique to the laws of Basar veChalav, as opposed to, in contrast to all other kashrus subjects, kashrus foods, and that is it has a three-way prohibition, one of cooking, one of eating, and one of benefiting. So this was the map chapter. We did this. We discussed why the whole chapter is going to be going through biblical versus rabbinical mixtures. We said the reason why we care about this is because that will have a practical ramification in terms of whether all three of these prohibitions apply or not. Meaning these three of cooking, eating, benefiting all apply certainly by the biblically forbidden mixtures. What about by the rabbinically forbidden ones? Do they apply? So that's why we need to know the difference. And this is what we were up to. For what reason does the Torah teach us the prohibition against eating meat and milk together from a repetitive command? We had Beshkacha Pratis. It was the next day's Chumash last week. It was Wednesday's Mishpatim. The first time. Beshkacha Pratis. Look at that. So we were actually having the class on the night of that Chumash. So God's just giving us a little. That's how God sends us an emoji with a smiley face.
Well, it's also interesting in the portion, sort of like in the middle of. It was played that one soup was placed right in the middle of.
Right, so I said last week, it was like a guy giving a speech, all of a sudden screaming out, "Don't cook the meat." Anyways, so why did the Torah? So we said that we learn out these three prohibitions, the fact that it's repeated, it's redundant for three times. And we asked a simple question. Why didn't the Torah just say straight up, don't cook, don't eat, don't benefit? Why be crooked? Why give it to us in this crooked way? You say, don't cook, don't cook, don't cook. And then we had the joke last week that we said on that because of that. And then we need Chazal and Tereshah Baal Peh to come and teach us, oh, by the way, it's saying it three times in order to. It's a very strong question. And this question is actually addressed by the Mechaber himself in the Shulchan Aruch. Usually the Mechaber is not a mepalpel. He doesn't usually go into a pilpul of, these type of questions, but this time he does because it's a halachic ramification. He says this, we're right now starting the first sif, the first halach in Siman Pei Zayin in Hilchos Basar veChalav. It says it in the Torah three times, do not cook the kid in his mother's milk, for the three prohibitions that we learned from it, cooking, eating, and benefiting. And now he explains why the Torah said it in this way. The Torah worded the prohibition of eating and the prohibition of benefiting as do not cook, through a redundancy, to teach us that when is it forbidden to eat meat and milk? Only when it's derech bishul. In other words, we're learning a major fundament in the laws of Basar veChalav through the Torah having taught us the law or the prohibition against eating meat and milk together in this manner. And that is that you only transgress eating meat and milk together if they were cooked together. If meat and milk were not cooked together, they are a cold shidduch, cold cheese and cold hamburger, and you eat them together in a sandwich. There was no biblical prohibition of Basar veChalav.
According to
Torah.
Yeah.
Biblical. It's rabbinic. Okay, so that's to teach us that. And it's not just that it teaches us that it has to be cooked. It doesn't just come to exclude cold with cold. It comes to exclude anything that's not derech bishul. So even if I have cooked the meat and milk together, but not in a normal way that's defined as derech bishul, and we will learn throughout the chapter what that means, not this week, but in the coming shiur. So we will learn what's defined as derech bishul, but that enters a whole discussion. What do you define as derech bishul? And therefore, there would be a biblical prohibition to eat this derech bishul basar veChalav, and what is not, and therefore it's only a rabbinical prohibition, since it's not considered derech bishul. I'll just give for an example. If I pickled meat and milk together, for example, if I left, if milk spilled onto my tray of chicken, and I didn't heat the chicken afterwards. I'm eating the chicken's already fully cooked, and I'm eating the chicken plain with the milk on it, even if it's soaked for 24 hours. It's not an issur deraisa. It's not a biblical prohibition. Oh, we have a rule kavush kamavushal. That's not a normal way of cooking. Okay, and we're going to learn. There's many different. I'll give you another one. According to the Torah, there's a way you can make. You can make hamburgers with cheese, okay, in a kosher way biblically. How? Cooking them. No. Cooking them fully cooked. Fully cooked.
Cooking it separate. To cook the cheese.
No, I'm talking about they're both cooked together hot. I'm telling you right now, there's a way, according to the Torah biblically, to achieve a hamburger with cheese fully cooked together, and it's not been a Torah. And we're right next to the city, Chame Tiveria, the hot springs of Tiveria. If you put a hamburger with a slice of cheese on top and bottom in a bun inside a pot and put it inside Chame Tiveria, it'll take about, I would say, 10 to 20 minutes to cook. Fully cooked, tastes delicious. Min Torah, it's kosher. It's not a normal way of cooking.
So you did the same thing, you put it out on the pesach in the hot sun?
Correct. Min Torah, it's not a normal way of cooking. Correct. But rabbinically, it's anyways usher. And I already told you, so why then do we need to know all this? Because there are some practical ramifications regarding benefit, regarding a cooking prohibition, as we learn eventually. So that's, though, the first very fundamental rule. So we will now begin the cooking prohibition, okay? So I have to say, regarding the cooking prohibition and even eating and benefit prohibition, most of the stuff we're going to be learning is actually not explicitly in the Shulchan Aruch. So most people who are just learning plain smicha from the book, they won't learn this information, which is really sad because it's very important information, very practical information regarding the cooking prohibition and the benefiting prohibition. So I'm just saying we're not going to, it is some stuff from inside the Shulchan Aruch, but it's mainly out. It's about this much of the book. And after that, we're going to begin the full-on study inside the Shulchan Aruch of all the different cases of biblical versus rabbinical, derech bishul versus non-derech bishul, etc. So let's begin with the cooking prohibition and all of its details. So the issur min haTorah of cooking basar veChalav together, of cooking meat and milk together. Let's talk about the normal way. You have a pot that's sitting on your stovetop or in your oven. Meat and milk are inside of it. So it's usher to cook any amount of it. Any amount, doesn't matter. But lashes is only given if a person cooks a kazayis. In all isurei Torah, in all Torah prohibitions, you have to do a certain measurement in order to be liable for punishment by Beis Din. Even on Shabbos. Correct. You only if someone eats a kazayis of chametz, is it chayiv karis. A person eats less than a kazayis, there's no isur karis and there's no lashes. So that's halacha Moshe Sinai, that all the Torah prohibitions have minimum measurements, and basar veChalav is no different. So if somebody did not eat a kazayis of basar veChalav, then although it's biblically forbidden, chetzi sherasim min haTorah, the lashes prohibition, which is given for transgressing a negative command, does not apply.
It's reasonable.
Reasonable.
So when you said a kazayis, so it's a mixture. So it would be, let's say you have a kazayis of meat, but it's not a kazayis of milk.
Great question. How do we measure the kazayis? So this is obviously, there's no nafkamina today because anyways it's all prohibited, but this is for the Sanhedrin. If they got, they got someone, what did you do? Well, I had half a kazayis of a burger together with half a kazayis of cheese and they were baked together. So then, do we join them? The answer is yes. They join each other for a full kazayis. Okay? Because they become one new entity of basar veChalav. Now, okay, so with that said, so that explains the measurement and that any measurement is usher, but to be liable for lashes only with the kazayis of the measurement. Can I cook Basar veChalav for the sake of a guy? Can I cook meat and milk for the sake of a guy? Or for the sake of an animal? My animal loves ham and cheese. Not ham and cheese, beef and cheese, I should say. No, because the prohibition is not eating, the prohibition is cooking. So am I allowed to take a tarantula that I just found and feed it to my dog? Yes, I am. Tarantulas are not kosher. Nonetheless, you're even allowed to cook it if you want. If you have a special cooking pot for your dog, you can cook the non-kosher tarantula and feed it to him. No issue. There's no cooking prohibition against cooking tarantulas or any other bugs or non-kosher foods. The Isser is only of Basar veChalav, and therefore it's forbidden to cook meat and milk for the sake of your animal. Therefore, a person who accidentally, and we will discuss this later, and probably in the next class, purchase non-kosher pet food for his pet, which contains within it beef and cheese. Beef and cheese. It's bad enough that he bought it. If he heats it up, he will now transgress a biblical Basar veChalav cooking prohibition. So someone who heated it in his microwave and then fed it to his dog or cat got 2 for the price of 1. Transgress cooking and benefiting. He just didn't transgress eating. And if he wanted to taste it to make sure his cat shouldn't get spoiled food, then he got all 3 in. I don't know if everybody's aware about these things, about, even with simply just cooking something or giving it to an animal.
This is a microwave.
So is a microwave considered a derech bishul, regular way of cooking? Some people are very anti-microwaves. They say it's not considered cooking at all. It's throwing all these radioactive waves into my food. It's they refuse to call it cooking. So I don't know. It's a good question. Usually we regarding electricity, we hold that it's not considered a biblical form of cooking on Shabbos. So we may be here as well. Okay.
Is the 160 that we're applying to it? No. In terms of,
Bittul b'shishim? Yeah, we will learn that if there's only a drop of milk or drop of meat to fill into the milk, then it can be bittul b'shishim. That's what we have starting from chapter 91 and onwards. That's the whole discussion. We're not there yet. Very premature. Okay, so this was answered. Okay, we just discussed here on the slide. Minimum measurement is a kazai, sake of gentile or animal. We said is forbidden. Awesome enough there. We're now going to move on to another cooking-related question. This is from the Shulchan Aruch. This is what we're about to learn is from the Ramah in chapter 87, halacha 6. We're going to read it inside in a moment. Let me first preface the question. Raising the fire under a guy's pot. Let's say you have a guyish friend or a guyish colleague or whatever it is that he's cooking something, and he asks, yo, buddy, do you mind just hiring the flame for me a little bit? Are you allowed to do so?
it depends if there is a mixture of.
Well, he didn't ask me to open up the pot and look and start questioning him. Is it allowed? I don't know what's inside.
Is it a meat milk issue or just any?
It's a simple question. My guy asked me to hire the flame under his pot. Or I opened up the pot. I see, hey, this food ain't cooking well enough. I'll do my friend a favor. I'll hire the flame for him.
Yeah.
You don't like it?
No, you cannot.
Now you're
Not.
cooking, helping him cook.
But maybe he's making spaghetti. Maybe a spaghetti inside. I'm not benefiting, for sure not benefiting from it. So it's like this. So listen to what the Ramah rules.
Maybe are benefiting because he likes you more.
Let's see. Okay, let's see what the Ramah rules. Yesh ayrim. Some opinions say, and usually, not always, but usually, when there's a yesh ayrim, it's because not everyone agrees. Okay? Some opinions say, the aser, that it's forbidden, lachte sa'esh, to hire the flame, tachas kadeira shel goya, under the fire of a Gentile woman, but the same would apply to a Gentile man. It makes no difference. As sometimes they cook milk and sometimes they cook meat in it. And somebody who hires the flame under their pot ends up coming to transgress Basar veChalav. So he seems to be saying that you're not allowed to do it. But I have a few questions on it, which I believe you should have as well. And those questions are as follows. If I know for a fact there's a piece of beef and some milk inside this pot, what do you mean yesh ayman? That's the instrument of cooking, right? Well, yeah. Why yesh ayim? Everybody should agree it's forbidden. It's instrument to cook. When you hire a flame, you're helping the cooking. Does somebody argue on that concept that hiring a flame is not part of the cooking? If on Shabbos, I went ahead and I hired the flame, I can get skila and bring a chatos for cooking on Shabbos. So what's the difference? It's cooking. So what do you mean yesh ayim? And if there isn't meat and milk inside, then what's the issue? Why should the yesh ayim say it's aseh? What's their issue? What am I doing wrong? So the explanation is like this. And I'll say that the question is better than the answer. Okay, I'm not comfortable with the answers, but these are the answers that are given. Number one, even in the event that you open up the pot and you see a very innocent looking water and pasta under the OU cooking inside, everything's kosher. He's using kosher ingredients, water and pasta. Says the Ramah, yesh ayim, that it's usher to play around with the flame. Why? Because at times he had cooked milk in there, and at times he had cooked meat in there, and there's treif taste inside the walls of the pot, and that will now enter into the food. So you are in essence helping treif up the food with Basar veChalav. You are helping to extract the treif Basar veChalav taste and now spread it to another food. That's why it's only a yesh ayim. As you're not actually cooking meat and milk. That is one explanation.
So it's because of what the pot might have had before.
Exactly. Another explanation is perhaps right now there's only milk inside or only meat inside, but since in the past they have cooked meat, so that will cause the meat that's in the pot to then enter into the milk.
What about the 24 hours?
Well, maybe it's within 24 hours, right? So that's why this is. This is why this is only a shame, because others will say, "Hey, you're not unless you know for sure there's meat and milk inside. You're not actually cooking meat and milk together. It's only a worry of bringing the taste that's in the pot into the food, which is only a maybe. Maybe it's within 24 hours. Maybe it's not within 24 hours." And there's also an opinion that says we don't hold bishul achar bishul by Basar veChalav, meaning like this: the same way in Shabbos. Once a person has baked the challah, if somebody now takes it and puts it back in the oven, so you just transgress a baking prohibition. What do you mean? It's already baked. You can't rebake a baked product. You can reheat one, you can't rebake one. So in Basar veChalav, once it's already been cooked together, it's a done deal. You can't transgress anymore. So some opinions argue on the whole premises of the stringency. And that's why it's only considered a stringency. And the Ramah, in fact, concludes later on here in the same sif, Ub'di'eved ein lachish b'chol zeh. B'di'eved, don't worry about all this, meaning if you turn on the flame, don't worry, you don't have to ask your rabbi for a kapara, you did nothing wrong, it's okay. And even initially, this is just mere stringencies, and one who is lenient has not lost out. So bottom line, let's summarize this. According to the proper clarification, what the Ramah's intent was. If I know for certain that there's meat and milk cooking inside, no way. It's forbidden asur min haTorah to raise that flame. If I don't know, or I know for sure there isn't, then there's a stringency to still not raise the flame because of what's already been swallowed and absorbed into the walls of the pot of Basar veChalav, that you will help expel and treif up in this new power of pasta or in this milk, and there was meat within 24 hours, etc. So because of that, there's a stringency not to ever higher the flame of a guy's pot. Think about that. To never raise the flame of a guy's pot. It's quite an all-encompassing chumrah. So there's an opinion who's machmir, but the Ramah concludes, even the chatchila, it's just a chumrah, and someone who wants to be lenient, no problem. I don't know when this would come up with us, but someone wants to ask me the shaila regarding a meat restaurant under a certain hashgacha. He was called in to take over for his friend to be the mashgiach that day. He told me the following, that a guy was cooking, after the day was over, an Arab worker in the store was heating up some meat for himself in the pot. And he asked me, am I allowed to raise the flame based on what we just learned? Because here it's in a kosher kitchen and everything like that. That's your question? You're asking me about a chumrah? What about the fact that he just cooked bishul akum in the pot? He just cooked meat in the pot. So that's what you're worried about? That's nothing to worry about. The pot's strafe. He just strafed up the pot because of bishul akum. Nothing for you raising the flame, not raising the flame. That's what he was worried about. Raising the flame.
Whatever he cooks is going to be visual.
Whatever
he cooks will be visual.
The person who takes raw meat, a guy who takes raw meat and cooks it in a pot, bishul akum. Yeah. He turned on the flame and he cooked it. Mm-hmm. Even if it's kosher meat, and even though he's going to be the one, so he told him, but I'm not eating it. I'm like, you don't understand. I know you're not eating it. The pot becomes strafe.
I saw somewhere Allah prohibited a Jew that is not observant or doesn't keep Shabbos. You're proud, no?
Correct. That is true. Okay. Another case scenario that Lamaisa we rule would be Asr min Hadin and not just a stringency is as follows. I know for certain this pot was used with milk within the past 24 hours, and I know for certain that right now he's cooking meat. In such a case, that's an Issur D'Oraisa of cooking, because I am having fresh milk taste in the pot entering into this meat, and that would already be considered an Issur D'Oraisa of cooking, and therefore be forbidden. So those are the cases that it would be for sure Asr, the two cases I said before, meaning this case I just said in the previous case where it's actually meat and milk inside. Other cases, meaning you don't know, you have no clue what's inside, you have no clue when it was used last, it would just be a chumrah.
It doesn't matter that it's the Gentiles' pot and food.
Say that again?
It doesn't matter that the pot and the food is the Gentiles' food.
Correct. That's the whole chiddush here. That the Issur of cooking has nothing to do with what do you plan on doing with the food or whose food is it. Doesn't matter. There's an Issur to do the act of cooking.
So if you know more information, would that change? So for example, let's say on the really positive side, that you happen to know that even though he bought that pot that day, it's never been used. And what he's using is something that has a hechsher on it. And so then I think you'd almost for certain say that would be permitted to raise.
For everybody, because there's no doubt. Yeah, correct.
So on the other hand, let's say that now you have more information on the negative side that he tells you in that pot is Basar veChalav. So then would that change? Would that change? What we don't know. What we're saying,
The guy knows what Basar veChalav is?
He says there's milk and there's hamburger.
Ham. We're going to learn what ham is. Ham is not necessarily Basar. We'll learn. We're going to learn later on which meats are considered
No,
meats.
so let's say it's a hamburger.
Okay, if he says it's actual beef, right.
It's actual beef, and then there's.
Okay, so we already said be stringent, not to raise the flame, 100%.
So then once we know that information, so there's a range of choices based on how much knowledge we have.
Yeah, 100%. Is there a tissue over here? Oh, there's tissues over there.
Well, I don't think there's any question about this.
So,
I don't think any question.
well, then you're certain. If you know, but to eat first.
If this
If
gentleman
we don't
takes his
know,
own
we
pot
don't know.
and his own food, and is using the gas to heat it up, but he doesn't ask anybody else to.
That's this question. Okay, the next question is, in the Shulchan Aruch, are you allowed to allow a guy to cook meat? Are you allowed to allow a guy to cook meat with milk in her pots in one's home? Is that your question?
Oh, in his own pots.
Correct. Okay. In America, and I should say maybe in most of the diaspora, maybe here in Israel as well, in some places for old people, they have goyim that live by them, goyisha workers, goyisha housekeepers. And So let's say the housekeeper, keeping kosher is expensive. I would like to save some profit, save some expenses. So I tell the guy, you can buy your own non-kosher foods. I'm not in the agreement. I don't have to supply you food. You supply your own food and buy whatever you want. Here's a burner. Here, buy your own pots and cook. Is that allowed? Well, am I allowed to allow a Gentile to cook non-kosher foods or meat and milk in my kitchen?
Are you getting benefit?
Oh, what benefit am I getting?
That's a good question.
There's no benefit. Let's say there's no benefit.
Okay. I would say yes.
Oop, where did it go?
What do I?
No, it's still.
Okay, so here too, the Ramah says the following. He continues and says that there are some poskim. This is the same, by the way, poskim of the previous opinion as well regarding raising the flame, who write that it's forbidden for a Jew to allow a Gentile to cook meat and milk in a pot in the Jew's home. Just meat and milk. They can cook pork, they can cook lobster and shrimps. They can cook non-kosher food in their own pots in the Jew's home, but they have to keep Basar veChalav. So you have to tell them, please don't mix any milk into your meat products, and don't mix any meat into your milk products, but she can eat lobster and have ham and pork and everything else. This is what this opinion is saying. It's a very interesting distinction. He's saying that they can eat not kosher and cook not kosher, but Basar veChalav they have to keep.
It's very interesting because at veChalav last year we built the extension of the dining hall.
Right.
And also, so the workers they would make in the pot in the building place they would heat up and eat. They're just like by themselves. At the end, there are our promises. The ground is ours.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes pretty complications.
What's
How could you basically control
what they
the
do?
worker
Right.
on a piece of land
Right.
where they are building whatever they eat and whatever they don't eat?
But this is not a final law.
Oh, so this is some poskim rule. And the reason behind this opinion is because, once again, if we allow them to cook meat and milk, then you may come to raise the flame. And if you raise the flame, you end up transgressing biblically in cooking meat and milk.
So basically, if you're totally not around, it wouldn't be a problem.
If you're not
If you're totally not around,
around.
involved, it's not like
Correct.
in a house.
So in your case example of Beis Chan is not an issue because you wouldn't have that chance. Correct. Here we're talking about in your house.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but when you have a caretaker, that usually means that you're somewhat disabled, so.
So bottom line, based on this, it ends up that according to this opinion, that a goyish worker should have separate pots for meat and milk for her non-kosher foods. If she's cooking
And then
non-kosher.
after cooking, they are allowed to mix? Probably, yes.
I guess so, yeah.
We're not gonna micromanage.
I guess they can, just the cooking. They just have to be educated to keep meat and milk in that respect. So that's what the Rama concludes, that based on this opinion, they have to have separate pots. But nonetheless, he concludes in his conclusion that it is a mere stringency and the world is not careful to do so. In other words, the world is not careful to make sure that the maids have a meat pot and a milk pot for the non-kosher foods. And rather, it's a mere chumrah, because what are we saying? It's asur because you may come to. Okay? You can asur half the world because you may come to. Don't do it. Don't raise the flame. Don't be around her section of the kitchen where she cooks and raise flames because you don't know what's going on. But you have to be aware. You please be aware. If you know something happened and you want to do her a favor, you want to raise the flame under her pot to help her cook, you open it up. You can't. The truth is, in most religious homes, they would never, ever allow a maid to cook non-kosher food, let alone Basar veChalav in the same kitchen. But here we see in Chazal, they were a little less stringent. They allowed the maids, to cook non-kosher things in the same home.
So would it make a difference if there's more than one kitchen, or if they're cooking.
Yeah, if they have their own separate kitchen, 100%. Even this opinion of the Mordechai, he would agree that it's mutter. There's no chance anything would happen. Okay, we're going to now go through some questions and answers on the prohibition. So this is all from Shulchan Aruch that we did. This is all straight up from the Ramah that we learned, and it's in Sivav. And then we're going to go through questions and answers on the cooking prohibition. Let's begin. May one cook food in a treif pot for the sake of a Gentile? So the question is like this. Here the question is worded out a little more. One works as a caretaker in the home of a Gentile. The Gentile asks the Jewish caretaker if he can heat up milk in a pot for him. Now the Gentile's pots are used for both meat and milk. May he nonetheless heat milk in the treif meat pot. So I received this shaila a few times with from workers. You have a from worker who's working with the elderly, and this can happen even in Israel where, you have people who are not from. And the question is, can the caretaker follow those instructions? Now, when it's for a non-religious Jew, and you're cooking non-kosher food for them, it's a much more serious question because you're feeding them not kosher. But let's talk about for a guy. You're a caretaker for a guy. There's no mitzvah for the guy to eat kosher food. You're eating your own food. You're just cooking for them. So obviously, to cook meat and milk in there, we know the answer to that question. It's asur. That's not our question. We're just talking about cooking anything. So why not?
Because the prohibition is on you. Doesn't matter for who.
Right. Okay. So, but let's say she asks me, "Can you heat up some milk for me? Can you please? I'm really in the mood." The 75-year-old, 80-year-old woman asked the caretaker, "Can you please heat up for me some hot chocolate milk?"
There's no prohibition against that.
Well, let's analyze. This pot that I just took out of the cupboard, is it a kosher pot? Did it have meat cooked in it? Did it have meat cooked in it? So it's like this. If I know that this pot, there's no such thing as a meat pot, they're all meat pots, right? If I know that this pot was used with meat within the past 24 hours, like a caretaker or just did dishes, and I know what was in this pot, and there's no other pot available, then I'm not allowed to, because I am in essence cooking Basar veChalav with the meat taste that's absorbed inside of this pot. And that would be under a biblical prohibition. So in that case, just like we say you're not going to turn the flame higher when they're cooking milk inside with a benyamin meat pot, so too, I can't cook it for them. If, however, I know the pot's not benyamin, I did dishes, I put everything away, I know this pot I put away 3 days ago. So I know it wasn't used for anything. So as a caretaker, what would I do? I would make sure to take a pot that hasn't been used in 24 hours, and then it would be mutter for me to cook the milk inside. For you to eat, this would be forbidden because you're cooking milk in a meat pot. But for a guy, it's mutter. A guy's allowed to eat it, and there's no basar veChalav because it's past 24 hours. I have 24 hours. Nonetheless, even in such a case, it is proper to be machmir. So a person who wants to be a machmir caretaker for a guy should convince the guy of keeping kosher, separate meat and milk pots, and that will be his chumrah. But otherwise, minadin, so long as it's past 24 hours, this does not apply.
Or don't take the job to begin with.
Or don't take the job to begin with. But in these cases that I got the question, this was mamash the person's parnasa, and I was actually very impressed that people thought of the question. I was impressed people thought of the question. I think most people wouldn't even think it's a shaila. They were just, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm cooking for them, and that's it. I wouldn't even think there's a question involved. Now, the 24-hour rule only works if it's not chara foods. But let's say she asks me, "Hey, can you please saute some onions for me and make me a nice scrambled egg?" Or I want to do it on my own. I make the menu. You can't do it because all those pots are treif with meat and milk. When you use onions, it reignites the fresh taste of the meat and milk and basically creates a basar veChalav prohibition. So when it comes to chara foods, it would not be allowed. So here I wrote the following Eitzah. The guy who told you to make fried sauteed onions, do everything. Put it on top of the stovetop and ask the guy, turn on the flame. They'll turn on the flame.
Stir it.
No, I won't stir
Saying
it.
just onions.
Huh?
Saying just onions.
Onions, garlic, all the veChalav. But if I have them turn on the flame and then do the actual cooking, I can prepare everything. It's not an issue. Okay, so let's summarize this question. The answer is that there are severe limitations and restrictions on cooking food in a treif pot for the sake of a guy, because you have to be aware of the Basar veChalav prohibition. So you can't, if it's a ben yoma pot, you can't cook meat or milk in it. The opposite one in it. If it's not a ben yoma pot, then you can cook power food in it. In fact, you can even cook meat and milk if it's not ben yoma. But it's a stringency not to cook that. And regarding the veChalav, you can't cook the veChalav in it because it reignites it. May one work as a chef cook in a non-kosher meat restaurant, i.e. McDonald's? So this is another shaila I was asked. And it takes the information of the previous halacha, but it's more complex. And I'll explain. So first of all, before we go into the cooking aspect of the Isser, of cooking, putting meat with burgers, we have a general question if there's a business prohibition of making money from a non-kosher institute. When I'm a caretaker in the guy's person's home, I'm getting paid for everything. When I'm working in McDonald's, my parnassa is from treif food. That's what I'm doing. Okay, McDonald's doesn't sell anything else. They sell treif food. That's all they do.
You also have the thing that people see you there.
Marasai, okay, fine. But they see me with the workers thing on, right? They see that I'm a McDonald's worker. They don't see me eating there.
They feed the Jew that comes there.
Oh, okay, so let's go through. So the first main suspicion is, and the first main worry is, even if you're not involved in the cooking section, is the problem of doing business with non-kosher foods. There's an Isser brought in your Idea, a few chapters down in chapter 117 Shulchan Aruch, Kuf Yud Zayin, that it's forbidden to do business. Rabbinically, it's forbidden to do business with non-kosher foods. That means I'm not allowed to start a pig farm as a Jew. I'm not allowed to farm shrimp. I'm not allowed to farm lobster. Even if I have some great business ideas regarding marketing non-kosher foods, it's usher. Usher to be involved. Very good. It's forbidden. It's a big problem, and I know Jews who have done it. I was once in Mitzrayim. I became very close to a store owner who owned a huge supermarket in Brownsville, and they sold pork and they sold lobster. They sold everything. But if I would have told him that it's forbidden for him to do so, it would have been, we would have to shut down his store basically. And so in this case, we do better to be mistaken transgressors than be purposeful transgressors. So, he wasn't yet in a state ready to hear that halacha. But yes, it's usher to do business with non-kosher foods. Yes. So even if you're not, it doesn't matter about who you're selling it to. Even if I make sure I have a DNA test for every purchaser of the non-kosher food, and I verify he's for sure from a non-kosher tribe, from a Gaisha tribe, it doesn't matter. You're still doing business with the food. I'm not doing business. I'm just selling it. What is he making money?
You can benefit not just from meat and milk together, but
Meat and milk benefiting is an issa d'oraisa. Benefiting from other kosher foods is an issa d'rabbanan. Now there are ways it's mutter to benefit. For example, what happens if I was passing by McDonald's and somebody was on the run and they just gave me a whole bag. I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I have to run out. Just take this bag. It's full of Mac burgers. Here, keep it. It's yours. Bye. I'm stuck. I can't even say we're back. I have a whole bag now, paper bag of 10 Mac burgers. What am I going to do with it? Let's sell it to the guy. Stand in front of the store, sell it for $2 a piece, $2 a piece. I make $20. No problem. Why? Because you didn't purchase them. It ended up in your hands. So to a ger, a person whose family business is farming pork, okay, or farming any other non-kosher animal, and at a ripe old age he passed away, and he left the Yerusha to his sons, including the ger who became a ger Tzedek. So he has now a Yerusha. He has 5,000 porks. He has 5,000 pigs, okay, that in his Yerusha. What does he do with them? He's allowed to sell them. Because it came to him, not in a way of sale. It came to him, he didn't actively do business. That's the difference between the rabbinical and biblical. Since only rabbinical, there are cases we permit it to be done.
So you should just give it away.
Give away the 5,000 pigs. He wants to make money. Ger also wants to make money, right? So, but here in this case, this is purpose. This is a person going into McDonald's, getting himself a job. This is the Isser of business. So the poskim say that it's a question whether, in this case, we really consider it as if you're benefiting from the non-kosher food. In other words, because here, I don't own the food. I don't own McDonald's. I'm an accessory. I'm a worker. I'm an employee. So do we say someone who's involved in the process of the business is considered? So that's a machlekes in poskim, and we rule leniently in a time of need. In other words, when the person is not the actual owner of the object that's not kosher, but he's just involved in it, then in a time of need, we say it's not a problem. It's not considered a part of the business prohibition with non-kosher food. So in a time of need, somebody who mamash doesn't have a parnasa except for McDonald's, he's a misken, and he's allowed to work there, but the question is work as what?
Even if there is Basar veChalav. Even if he cooks Basar veChalav.
1 second. Okay, so right, possible. So it's like this. A general non-kosher restaurant, which I said before, only mainly contains the business prohibition generalized to all non-kosher foods like pork. Okay, you can't do business with it. If you don't actually own the pork, you don't actually own the pig, then we say it's a machlekes, and in a time of need you can be lenient. The problem with McDonald's is that they are specified as a meat and milk restaurant. And a meat and milk restaurant, burgers and cheese, is an Isser Deraisa benefit. It's not a biblical prohibition. It's not a rabbinical prohibition. It's a biblical prohibition. So maybe here we're more stringent. And the answer is that indeed we are more stringent. Okay? We are more stringent in this case. Most places can hold that Burger King, McDonald's, if they have biblical prohibition mixtures of meat and milk, that's their main product of money, of income, then that's what we consider to be your main income, and you're benefiting from Basar veChalav, and you can't. And therefore, you would not be allowed to work for them. Even if you're a janitor, just cleaning the tables, doesn't matter. It would still be Basar. Certainly, to work as a cook and place the slabs of cheese on the burgers would be an Isser Min HaTorah. That's without question.
But on the other side, working in a non-kosher supermarket could be much less problematic.
It's for sure much less problematic because you're not cooking anything, and you're exactly. So the guy I knew was the owner, but his Jewish workers would fall under the time of need leniency if that was a job they had that was available. There's no Basar veChalav.
There's no Basar veChalav, you can't work there.
In a time of need, if there's no Basar veChalav, you can work there. I got asked this question by somebody in India. And basically, even though India doesn't eat meat, there's a lot of insects they eat. There's a lot of bugs. It's a very buggy place. I mean, there's 1 billion people living there, so there's different areas, The area he was in, basically, it was basically selling trafe because of the insects and bugs and all these things. They asked me if there's a lot of work there. They don't check the rice. The rice is full of insects, etc. It's like part of the spice. So I said, it's not. They said, oh, you need the money, and there's nowhere else to work. You're allowed to work there. That's the setter. But if it was meat and milk, now the truth is that's not so simple. Even by Burger King and McDonald's, it's still not so simple. Why? Because it only applies when it's a biblical prohibition of meat and milk. Who says McDonald's meat is actual beef? If they use horse meat, there were branches of McDonald's that were discovered to use horse meat in England. They would use all the leftover horses, the ones who didn't make it on the rodeo. They, horse glue and McDonald's. Right, it is an exception.
They advertise as to what they're.
Oh, they advertise after they got caught. Of course they advertise. Right. So if it's beef, there's nothing to talk about. Real beef and real milk, nothing to talk about. There would be an Isser Deraisa to cook the foods, and because of that, most places can rule there would be no heter, even in time of need, to work for them.
Question his parents, so to speak, would have inherited these pigs. So he would have had to give it away, right?
Yeah.
But what
So
if he gave it to his brother, let's say, and his brother hired him as CEO, now he's working for him but doesn't own it? Would that be allowed?
you can't be involved in the company. Lechatchila you can. We said only in a time of need do we allow you if there's no other job available. Is a person allowed to be involved? So in McDonald's, even if he just wants to get window shiner, since unfortunately if it's true that the majority of the food cooked is meat and milk, actual meat and real milk, then most places can hold its usher. So if somebody ever asks, can I work at McDonald's or Burger King? The general answer would be no. Now, if this is a McDonald's that they use pork or they use another type of alternative non-kosher meat, then it would be much different because it's no longer a biblical Basar veChalav prohibition, as we will learn.
Basically, you also say that it's very difficult because mostly the provision for the owners is also problematic. So shareholders.
Very good question. Very good question.
Share funds.
Very good question, and I believe I addressed that question over here under benefit regarding owning stocks next year. Okay?
Who says only V?
Not next share, next shiur. Right? Owning stocks.
Only V. What about land?
Yeah, we're gonna learn the list.
Because it's in the Torah.
Correct. So lamb is also biblically forbidden. We're gonna learn the list later on when we get to the list of biblical prohibitions versus rabbinical. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, whose illustration is that?
I have no idea, but it's
No, I
common. I have permission to use them, if that's your question. I don't know whose it is, but
Okay.
Microsoft, let me just explain how I got them, okay, just for you to know. Microsoft has in PowerPoints, you have ability to extract pictures from common license. So it's a license, basically a free license to use, and that's where I get all these pictures from. Okay, so now we have some garbage relating questions, and we're going to conclude with these slides over here. We started a little late, so we'll go just a little over. I was once asked the following shaila. It's a very interesting question. The shaila was asked like this. This is how it was asked. I see all these people burning garbages in Meisharim and Geula when they're doing all of their, big, protests against this and that. So he said, I told one of the guys there, you guys are transgressing Basar veChalav. Now, if you guys don't care about Benanim l'Chaveira, you don't care that you're making it smell and making it horrible living standards for everybody here. What about Pasha Benanim l'Makim? You transgress Basar veChalav. People throw milk in the garbage. People throw meat in the garbage. You're cooking meat and milk. This is what he asked me. Am I correct in my argument? Am I correct in my argument? What do you guys say? Are you allowed to burn garbage that has meat and milk inside?
It's not the usual way of cooking. It's not what they want to do. It's not the doing it.
But you're still doing it.
That's
Secretion.
By burning it together with all other kinds of things, like also the bags and so on, will anyway make it not fit for consumption.
But is that like the Tiberius example? That you're not cooking?
But this is with fire. This is with fire. Yeah.
It's so Tiberius, you can't eat this, so is it really, if it's making something inedible, how would that be considered cooking?
So bottom line is that I wrote over here that it's mutter. And now we have to explain why is it mutter? Why is it mutter to burn it and end up cooking meat and milk together in this garbage? So first, number one, we have never ever heard of such a chumrah. Now, we all know that it's the custom of Klal Yisrael to burn chametz Erev Pesach. Not one book of all Judaism has ever written, be careful not to throw meat and milk in the same one. And it happens. You see all the time. This guy comes with his macaroni and cheese, and this guy comes with his macaroni and with spaghetti and meatballs. How come nobody ever warned, be careful, this is a milchik bir chametz, this is a fleishik bir chametz, and this is a parv. So the fact that we've never heard of such a thing should in and of itself be enough proof to say, and we don't understand why yet, but just first we have to build the case for why you just can't say it's usher. it would be ludicrous to say it's usher because it goes against what the precedent of what we've seen. There's also the Ramah in 87.6 we're going to learn writes that it's mutter to mix leftover dish water of meat together with leftover dish water of milk. He writes it's usher to feed it to the animals, but he doesn't make, the inference is that it's permitted to do the actual mixture. The issue is just with feeding it to the animals. In other words, when you're not intending on cooking the two together, but you're just intending on throwing it out or destroying it, it doesn't consist of cooking. It's not called cooking, it's called destroying. In other words, here the intent comes in, what your intent is to do. There's another proof.
But then take it a step further. There are garbage places where they burn the trash to make energy. So
you're still not intending to cook meat and milk together. You're intending to destroy everything.
You benefit.
No problem. I have no problem if you benefit from it. They're also benefiting from burning the trash. They're making a mayhem in Jerusalem. That's why they're doing it. That's not what I care about.
It's only one of the prongs of the test, the benefit. The first.
Right. It's not. I wouldn't consider it cooking. It's going to destroy. In other words, bottom line is that while we can debate over the reason why this would be mutter, but for sure it's mutter because no one ever wrote it's usher in Minig Yisrael. We see regarding beer chametz, and it would be very. On the other hand, I did find the Yad Avram was on Achron writes. I'm sorry. The Sefer writes the following: that if you see a piece of meat in your garbage, don't spill hot milk into it. He writes such a thing. Okay. But according to what we explained, it wouldn't be a problem because you have absolutely no intent to do cooking. But it's a very good question. I think the question here is better than the answer, but the answer we can safely conclude would be yes, it is permitted. The next one. May one pour hot meat or milk towards the garbage that may contain meat and milk. So that's what I just said before. Similarly, it would be mutter based on what we said, but some right not to do so. It's, by the way, they were the only machim are by actual meat, like steak or lamb, and not by chicken. Okay. The next one. May one on Erev Pesach throw spaghetti and meatballs into the bir chametz bonfire if someone else just threw macaroni and cheese? What do you guys say based on what we just said?
Yeah.
Mutter, will be mutter to do. Okay, we're going to continue from next week. Question answers Alamir al-Nachri. And we have a few more slides here and we're done. Oh, that's actually the last one. You want to finish this? You guys want to just finish this? Yeah? Take about 5 minutes. Okay. Yeah. So question is Amir al-Nachri. This is regarding asking a Gentile to do cooking for you. Number one. May one ask a Gentile to cook meat and milk on his behalf, meaning for the Jew's behalf. I know I can't cook, but can I ask a guy to cook for me? I'm not going to eat it. I'm doing it, let's say, for experimental purposes. Yeah, laboratory.
To feed it to the cat.
No, I'm not benefiting from it either. Laboratory purposes, scientific purposes. I want to study. We just had a whole class of meat and milk. I learned all the bad things about it. I want to see scientifically. Can I ask a guy to do it? No. So the answer is that it's forbidden. Amir al-Nachi is not a Shabbos prohibition that what you can't do on Shabbos, you can't ask a guy to do. It's all the Torah. Anything in Torah that you cannot do, you likewise cannot ask a Gentile to do for you, including cooking meat. Exactly. So that is clear. It is absolutely forbidden, just like in the whole Torah.
If he cooks it by himself, could you use it for experiments?
Are you saying is that considered benefit?
Right. He does the cooking.
The question is that considered benefit?
You finish it.
Is it considered benefit? That's the question. That's a question by benefit, so hold on to that. May one tell a Gentile to go buy meat and milk and cook himself a meal. Can I tell a guy, I think for you, I'm a doctor, I think it'll be very healthy for you to have a nice cheeseburger with a slab of cheese, or let's say this guy says, that's it, I want to have euthanasia, I want to leave the world, I want to die. So you want to give him a diet that he can leave the world quite quickly. So you tell him, take 5 slabs of cheese, a few slabs of lard, a nice fattiest beef you can find, make a big sandwich every day, and eat it. Can you tell him that? Answer is yes. It's his money, yeah. I'm not paying for his diet.
Then the question is, for example, you are a contractor, and you have non-Jewish workers.
You know, if I have to provide them food, it's something else. But I'm allowed to tell my worker that I don't have to provide lunches for. Go buy yourself, go to McDonald's. I'm allowed to tell him that. He's saying, we're hungry, we don't have what to eat. Go to McDonald's. I don't know. If I have to provide him food, I'm not allowed to tell him.
Benefits from him.
You can't give them money to buy something.
I can give him money. Sure, I can give him money.
If you benefit from the
Pay him,
worker,
and then he can do whatever he wants with the
you
money.
benefit from the worker once he has eaten.
Of course you can. Otherwise, you can never use any guy because they're
If you have
trade.
benefit from him, he's gonna have eaten
Yeah,
this-
but it's not direct benefit from the meat and milk. It has to be direct benefit from the meat and milk itself. So this would be mutter to do to tell him to go buy. Number 3, may one provide a Gentile with meat and milk and tell him to cook it himself. Meaning, I'm going to give him the meat and milk of my meat and milk, and I'm going to tell him to cook it. This already would be forbidden to do because it's a gzeira, basically. Since it was your meat and milk, therefore it seems like he's your shliach to cook it for you. So this is forbidden to be done. And based on this, it would seemingly also be forbidden for me to give him money and tell him, go buy yourself McDonald's. When I can tell him, take money, buy yourself lunch, and you have McDonald's, you have this, you have that, I can give him different options. He can decide to do what he wants.
You give him money, saying it's your money.
Yeah, exactly. I'm giving him as your money. I'm not telling him.
It's a problem.
Huh?
If you say you're
Right, it would enter that problem. So too, I can give him meat and milk and tell him, go do what you want with this. And I'm not telling him to cook it together. Then it would be, okay, that's the end of this PowerPoint. In the Mitzvah next week, we will continue from the eating and benefiting prohibition. Right.
Yaakov, back to your Tefillin book, aside from the typos, I have 2 suggestions if you're going to revise edition.
Okay.
Depending on who you see the intended audience is. One, I think we should have a glossary.
Rabbi,
Walter,
Walter and the street.
Yeah, I thought I did.